Hey everybody, this is Adam Rippon. Let's get right into it. Hey everyone, like I said, this is Adam Rippon. Welcome back to the podcast by Adam Rippon. Today, I was traveling. And to travel, that meant I needed to take transport. And the kind of transport I took was plane. Now, I'll be honest, when I was getting ready to take this flight, I was not completely looking forward, not to the trip, but for the flight. I'm currently in Boston for the 2025 Figure Skating World Championships, and I'm working the NBC broadcast while I'm here. And I got my ticket to come to Boston a few weeks ago. And so I knew that as an experienced traveler, I needed to get onto the Delta app, the Delta website. I'm Delta loyal. And I actually wasn't always this way. I used to be United loyal. But they kind of fell out of my good graces. And I don't really have a good reason as to why they did, but they did. And I think they know what they did. I don't remember. But I hope that they remember and addressed it. Regardless, I am Delta loyal. That being said, I got my ticket a few weeks ago. And I knew that I needed to get into the app so that I could work my magic with the seats. And you might be thinking, work your magic? What does that mean? Well, I'll tell you, it just means that I would just change it to a different seat and kind of hope that magically I would get put in business class, which my ticket was not for. See, I was in row 33 today with the window seat, which is not my preference. And I actually knew that I was going to have the window seat, which is why I needed to get into the app, right? I needed to do this early on, which I did not do. But I manifested something today. And I thought that the manifestation that I had kind of put out into the universe had backfired. I was really nervous of that once I entered the craft. Because when I got to sort of the 30s area, which did take about 25 minutes to kind of get all the way back there. It is not close to the front of the plane. It's actually much closer to the back, if not all the way in the back. And so once I finally kind of trekked my way all the way back there, I did sort of a left-right look to see what's happening in sort of the 30 block. That's where I'm going to be for the next 5.5-ish hours, LA to Boston. And I see something that does scare me. It does scare me when I see this. All throughout row 33, I see two babies and two parents who already do look quite tired. I have a mom on one side with one baby and a dad on the other side with a baby. Basically, I'm surrounded. I'm cornered. And I'm getting a bit uh-oh. Because I'm looking at my ticket and I see I have a window, but they've kind of set the baby up near the window. And it's kind of in this moment I go, okay, wait, maybe this is all working out in my favor. So I ask and I double check. And I was sitting next to the mom at first. And she was so apologetic. She was like, oh my God, I'll move everything if you really want to sit by the window. And I was like, no, you have no idea. You having a baby today is kind of changing the trajectory of my entire travel day. Which it did. And so I want you to know that in row 33, when I was supposed to have a window seat, God looked down at me and he said, yeah, I'm not going to upgrade you. I'm actually not even going to do anything of the sort. But I will put you in the aisle so you don't feel claustrophobic. And to me, it was sort of a win. My flight was pretty early in the morning, and I feel like when you have an early morning flight, it's pretty hit or miss how you're going to feel. And I actually only believe in early morning flights when you're going to somewhere because I feel like the adrenaline and the excitement of going to the place sort of overrides the absolute feeling that you're on your last legs and you should start drafting your obituary. Because I feel like when you take a morning flight leaving somewhere, I'd rather kind of call it tap out, not get on the plane. So I don't really believe in leaving early, going back home, even though I know some people have the mentality of, but I'm going to get home sooner. Yeah, but at what cost? Get home sooner to feel like you just wish you got a bit more sleep? I don't. I understand what you're saying, but I don't believe in it. And I don't think you should believe in it either. I am also very skeptical of the people, and I'm related to some of them. My mother is somebody who really swears by a red eye flight. And I just can't get behind that at all. I cannot be a supporter of the red eye flight. I think there's a time and a place, like in an emergency, like you need to get there the next day. But if you booked one in advance, I don't know what to tell you. I really don't know what to tell you. I actually do know what to tell you. Don't do that. Don't do that. You don't need to leave at 6 a.m. There's an 8 a.m. flight, right? Like it's bad enough to get to the airport at 6 a.m. Why are you trying to get to the airport at 4 a.m.? So I just don't believe in that. But I believe in getting to the airport at 4 a.m. if you're going there, right? Because I'm going to be up the whole night packing, no matter the duration of the flight. If I'm going for 2 hours or 2 days or 2 weeks or 2 months, I will somehow find a way to turn the packing experience for that trip into an all-night experience. There's no way around that for me. I don't know. I think I need the impending pressure of like, you need to leave here within 5 minutes or it's not going to happen. And unless I have that pressure, the bags aren't getting zipped. It's not really going to happen for me unless I have that external pressure of like, there will be tears at the airport unless you leave within 5 minutes. And so unless I have that sort of pressure, I'm staying up all night. I'm staying up all night. I'm maybe getting a 1 hour nap just to say that I closed my eyes for a minute. So I don't have a mental break. I don't go insane. But other than that, I'm up and I'm alert. And since I am on the subject of travel, that really leans into our first voicemail.
Please leave your message after the tone.
One of my favorite stories of yours is the one about how you plugged your phone in on a plane heading into New York and you lost your phone and you had to dismantle the whole plane. It was like a whole situation. First, I just wanted to say that my family and I loved that story and we think of you every single time they mention like charging ports on a plane, and we have never plugged our phones in out of fear of having an incident similar to yours. I'm just wondering, how has that affected your air travel currently? Like, do you still plug your phone in on planes? Has it like traumatized you at all? Has it changed your outlook on the airline industry in general? So yeah, I'd love your thoughts on that. Thank you.
I would like to start this off by saying, yes, I am traumatized from it completely, and I'm going to stay this way for the rest of my life. For those of you who don't know this story, because it was sort of out there nationwide, kind of the whole country was talking about it, even the world, I think. But if you're not familiar with the story that this caller is talking about, I'm going to share it with you. So I was flying to New York. And on this flight, I was flying in business this time, was not anywhere near row 33. This time I was up in the front. And while I was on this flight, I really love to kind of have my space organized. And I love my little travel pouches and this and that and whatever. So I'm not like throwing things all over the place. Like it's kind of military style organization in my immediate vicinity. And I thought it would just look kind of cool and chic and just like how effortless is he if I plugged my phone in because I did need to get a bit of a charge before I landed. And then I just kind of put it on the little armrest side table. And so it was just kind of there. And if you do ask me, I think it looked kind of elegant. Just the way that I had things kind of around me, like the bags, they were organized. The phone is just kind of there. Like it's just a guy on the go with just, he's organized and he's got it all together. That's how I felt until turbulence. Now, in this turbulence, which I am not a stranger to, I know that there's going to be some turbulence. That's the name of the game when you're up in the sky. That plane is gonna shake. Things are gonna move. But I'm wearing my seatbelt. But what was not wearing a seatbelt was my phone, which I had kind of elegantly, as I said, put on the armrest next to me. And so there's this a bit of whoa, turbulence. And my phone, I hear it like thud onto the ground. It's happened before. I've dropped something on a plane. I've dropped my phone on the plane. So I'm very familiar with that thud sound. And so I do what anybody would have done in this situation. I grab the wire, because the wire and the phone both like kind of fell through the little side of the chair, right? Like they both fall through. And so I grab the wire and it feels suspiciously light. And so I'm getting a bit like, oh, great. Like the phone unplugged. Now I need to find it. It's somewhere like Free Willy on the floor. So I just check to see if I'm right. So I start kind of fishing the phone up. And when I get to the end of the line, which in this sort of scenario is the iPhone connector, no phone at the end. And so I start to kind of bend forward as you would if you read the pamphlet that said what position you need to get into if you have to brace for impact. So I'm sort of getting in that position, but just to find my phone. And I can't find it anywhere. And so now I'm going to have to get a bit embarrassing, and I'm going to have to kind of tap the people behind me and in front of me and say, hey, is there kind of a phone that's on the floor near you? And they don't see anything. And so I'm just thinking, you know what? I am a friendly person. I'm personable. I'm not afraid to strike up a conversation with a stranger. And so I do just that. And when the flight attendant comes around and asks if there's anything that I would like or need, I explained the situation and they said, you know what? When everybody's getting off the plane, why don't you just like hang tight? And if nobody sees it, we'll all look for it together. I said, thank you so much. And so I have to wait for everybody to get off of the plane, which I have no problem doing. I'm having the time of my life because I am basically doing like a one-man show with the entire flight crew at this point, kind of explaining how I basically said the same thing. I had it all together, had my little bags here, and I thought I was so elegant, phone drops. And they're hooting, hollering, laughing. They're loving this sort of show I'm putting on. Until we start looking for the phone and it's not on the floor anywhere. And so I see two of the flight attendants sort of look at each other and they go, just stay here for 1 second. And I see them get on the phone. And the next thing I see are three guys in like the construction fluorescent vests get on the plane with like tools and drills. And they start ripping up these business class seats, taking them apart, nuts and bolts, gone, disassembled, truly just all over the place. And I'm going, what's kind of going on here? And they're like, well, we have a bad feeling that if these guys can't get to the phone, it may have fallen into the plane. And I said, you're going to have to explain that one to me. What do you mean into the plane? How did it fall into the plane? Isn't there sort of a floor? I didn't know that there was some sort of trap door for iPhone 11s. I don't remember which one I had, but it was, this was a few years ago. Let's just say 12 Max Pro. 12 Max Pro. And they're like, we actually, that is sort of the flaw of these planes. And, then I start thinking, I'm like, I've never had this sort of issue in economy. Because back in economy, you're prepared for sort of any situation scenario. And when you get up to business, that's where they have the holes in the floor. And so this is really a predicament that I found myself in at this point, because I'm not finding the phone anywhere. And I am believing the flight attendants and the flight crew that's there telling me that they think the phone is in the plane at this point, and that there's kind of nothing that they can do. And there's nothing anybody can or will do for me. And I've come to terms with that. I'm like, okay, let me just kind of figure out my next steps. Eventually I get off the plane and I do find my iPhone on my computer. And my computer is saying that the phone is still on the plane. And this is when it hits me of like, oh, like the phone is in the plane. Like it's in it. I am, as a person, do love to do a bit of high-low, right? So the high of this would be that I was flying business to New York. And the low, you would think, would be losing the cell phone. No, that is not the low. The low would be that my cell phone provider is, in fact, Spectrum Mobile. And I want you to know that in the area that I live in, in California, the area that I live in, Spectrum is, you can hear my voice cracked because I'm getting really emotional about Spectrum. They mean so much to me. So when I moved into the house that I'm in, I needed to get internet, and the only provider I could get was Spectrum. And I was being given the sales pitch of, do you want to get the cable? Do you want to get a landline? And I didn't get a landline, but I did get talked into the cable, which I really don't use. So don't really know why I have it, but I do. And then we get to the question of who's your cell phone provider? Now, when it comes to cell phone providers, I've been sort of through the ringer. I can tell you all about it. So the first cell phone provider I ever had was Verizon. And really, I have no complaints with Verizon because that was some of the best service and signal I've ever had. Verizon was top tier when it comes to cell phone signal. I didn't realize that a dropped call was a real thing. Like, I thought it was a fake thing that people said in like movies. Like, I didn't think calls actually just like went out. Like, I always thought the connection was strong. I found out it wasn't because the biggest flaw of Verizon is, of course, that it's expensive. And so when I was like in my early 20s, paying $150 for a cell phone bill, I was like, absolutely no fucking way. That's crazy. And I should have known something was up when I did the next sort of thing that I did. And that was walk into a Sprint store. Now, Sprint, the quality of call you'll have on a Sprint line is like 2 soup cans and a string. It is truly terrible. And this is when I learned, calls dropping is a thing. Like, you can drop a call. Like, it's not just a turn of phrase. Like, it's an action. It's a problem, actually, that people have with cell phone service. And I should have known something was up because when I walked into that Sprint, they treated me like I was fucking King Charles. They were so nice. And I want you to know, this was like 20, 13. Okay. So I want you to, like, that's the picture that I'm painting. And they're not treating me nice for any other reason other than we got one. And when I say we got one, I mean we got a Verizon customer, hook, line, and sinker, because they got me. And they got me because they started throwing all of this free stuff at me. And they're like, your cell phone bill will only be $25 or $50. I don't know. It's truly irrelevant because it was money down the drain. Because I don't think text messages went through, phone calls didn't go through. Having Sprint was like the worst decision of my entire life. But when I went in there for the first time, they gave me gift cell phone covers, a giant, beautiful speaker that I used in my home for 10 years. Just gifts upon gifts. But the one gift they couldn't give me was secure line. Right? Like they couldn't do that. So they had to throw all of these things at me. So the day that I left Sprint was truly one of the best days of my life. And then from Sprint, I went to AT&T. AT&T was fine, but once you had sort of tasted the sweet, sweet fruit of a stable Verizon line, AT&T was just sort of, it was better than Sprint, right? Like it was better than Sprint, but I knew that on Verizon, there was no sort of, I'm going through a rough patch. I might lose you here. Like that never happened on my Verizon line, but it still happened on the AT&T one. That being said, like way better than the Sprint, because the Sprint was like, somehow they figured it out that a wireless phone could have a dial-up connection. Like they figured that out. And I don't know how they did it, but they did. They made absolutely something so terrible that they should be ashamed, and I actually think they're out of business, which they should be. But then from AT&T, I knew that things could be better. So at this point, when I am now kind of going back to the story, when I moved into my house and I'm getting the internet, and now I have cable TV, which again, like I'll never use, but I'll have it. And we get to the point in the call when the Spectrum associate has to now sort of pitch me Spectrum Mobile. And I'm sort of rolling my eyes. As somebody who used to be with Sprint, I'm not falling for the peddling MLM of joining some bullshit cell phone company. Until he tells me this bit of information that I find quite enthralling. And it's that Spectrum had acquired all of the Verizon towers, or Verizon had purchased Spectrum, one way or the other, right? Again, I want you to know that when you come to this podcast, it's for the stories, not for the facts, all right? So just keep that in mind as this story does go on. So one way or the other, it doesn't matter, but what does matter is that Spectrum Mobile works on Verizon towers. And so as soon as he said that, my ears were perked. I was fully engaged and I wanted to know all about it. I did a quick Google. It was true that Spectrum Mobile was using Verizon towers. And so I said, you know what? Fuck it. Fuck it. I'm done with this name brand life. And the name brand I was done with was AT&T because my cell phone bill was still in the hundreds. And I just felt like it didn't need to be. It just didn't need to be. Maybe that's what it should have been, but I didn't want to. So I found out what my cell phone bill would be. And I pay $40 a month for my cell phone bill. Unlimited data. $40 a month. I was paying $150 for my Verizon cell phone bill in 2012. In the year 2025, I'm paying $40 a month for unlimited data. Now, you can't beat that because I'm also bootlegging off of the Verizon towers, as I said. Now, all of this seems too good to be true. And if you do think that, you are correct. Because everything that you do in regards to your phone has to go through Spectrum Mobile. Right? Like if you want to get a new phone, you can't get it at the Apple store. You need to get it at the Spectrum Mobile store because otherwise it won't work with the towers. Because at this point, I've kind of realized that they're peddling off of the towers of Verizon. Like maybe there is some sort of like Geneva Convention between Spectrum and Verizon, but it can't be that legit because you can't just get the phone and it'll work. Like you got to go through the big guy, and the big guy is the Spectrum Mobile store. You got to go into one, which did mean I needed to find a Spectrum Mobile in Manhattan somewhere, which wasn't too crazy, but it was crazy enough that like, why couldn't I just get any sort of phone from somewhere else? Well, I couldn't because I was, basically signed a contract in blood to Spectrum Mobile that anytime I would need to do anything in regards to my cell phone, it would need to be at the store. And so that is the crazy part about having a Spectrum Mobile phone account, is that if you ever lose your phone and you're not in a city where there is a Spectrum Mobile that you can get to the next day, you will be doing that trip without a cell phone. And they will go, I'm so sorry, and that is way too fucking bad. But if you want to pay $40 a month, this is sort of the price you have to pay. And I will keep paying it because it's still over $100 cheaper than that Verizon number, which again, they're scamming us. But Spectrum's not. They're just kind of binding us to their brick and mortar store, which is fine because it's saving me some money. So I finally do get this cell phone at the Spectrum Mobile store the next day, and I immediately go on, find my iPhone. Where the hell is that phone? And I can see that it's still at JFK Airport. And I'm like, this is crazy. My phone is just on that plane. When I'm in New York, I'm meeting up with a bunch of my friends, and I'm obviously telling this story because I am now on tour of telling this story, doing a one-man show to anybody who will listen. And believe me, a ton of people wanted to listen. It was quite popular, me telling this story. And I go, yeah, you can see right here, I'm in the middle of telling it again. You can see right here on Find My iPhone that the phone is still on the plane. I open up Find My iPhone. No, the phone is not at JFK Airport anymore. It's now in Bogota, Colombia, but in the airport, right? And I'm going, wait, what? This is crazy. So now I have this no additional part to the story. I tell the story again to somebody else. I go and find my iPhone. My phone is now at Chicago O'Hare International. This phone was making its rounds around the country, around the world, traveling internationally until it did die. And so I have no idea where that phone is, but I do know that if that plane is still flying, it's in the belly of the beast. And it can't be the only one, but that is sort of the reason of why now when I charge my phone on the plane, I have a bag, like my big carry-on bag. I will plug the phone in, but I'm always putting the phone in the carry-on bag and zipping it closed so that it's basically like in a jail. So I put the phone in jail so that it's not flying around anywhere. And I don't even like using it on the plane, to be quite frank with you. But sometimes you got to. But I don't like doing it because I know what it's like to lose it through the cracks and crevices of the faulty sort of build of a Boeing plane. Because before they were failing safety inspection, the phones were falling through the cracks of the floor. So I want you to know that, like, the signs were always there that the phones were going to fall through. And so, yeah, it did completely change the way that I interact with going on a flight and being on a flight. Because the one thing I don't want to do when I travel somewhere is to get the directions to the local Spectrum Mobile store. That's for damn sure. That's really one place that I don't really need to visit cross country. Because the Spectrum Mobile store is a bit dire, because they also know that they're not like a real mobile service provider. Like they're just sort of the illegitimate child of a cable company that's peddling a signal off of a nationally recognized carrier. So, and they know that. They're not saying that, but they do know it. Let's do another voicemail.
Please leave your message after the tone.
It's Friday night. We've decided to go out for drinks for an evening. We've got a bunch of stuff to do in the evening. On Saturday. What are we drinking on Friday night to make sure that Saturday is successful? Thank you.
No, thank you. In regards to this voicemail, what are we drinking on Friday night to make sure that we have a successful Saturday? And by the amount of attempts it took to kind of string that sentence together, I'm going to make a bold proclamation of what are we drinking tonight? I think water. And if you don't want water, maybe a vitamin water or a Pedialyte or Pediasure, right? I think something with electrolytes in it regardless. Because the way that your current night sounds, sort of like this Saturday won't be good if this voicemail was coming in on, like I'm assuming, a Friday. So my recommendation is water. We're going to be drinking water, a few glasses of it, actually, while we're at it. 8 ounces, 16 ounces, sort of dealer's choice at that point, but at least that.
Please leave your message after the tone.
And I guess one of my big questions is if you could share some of your favorite recipes for meal prepping. You really have me intrigued by this because the way you're talking about it, I am just sold.
Okay, I want you to know that before I had ever actually meal prepped, I found it so intimidating because I was like, what are the recipes? I was so hung up. I'll do this as soon as I know the recipes. And now I've been doing it for like 3 weeks, and I want you to know there is no recipe, right? The only recipe is this, and this is what you need to follow. Pack the whole meal in a 16-ounce container, 2 cups of food, okay? But I'm packing it in there, right? Like it's like once I get it out into like a bowl, it's like a full meal. But I'm doing that so that it's easy for me to put them all into the refrigerator. But what am I doing? What's the rule of thumb? And it's this easy. I'm telling you, it's just this easy. What I do, because I'm trying to get a lot of protein throughout the day. So what I do is I do have a little food scale. So I put the little cup on, I hit the button tare, which sort of kind of makes the weight of it 0, even with the cup on it. It's like that's the new 0. Are you following? I'll kind of explain this in a second. And then I put 6 ounces of some sort of protein, chicken, beef, ground beef, whatever. And then I just fill the rest up with some sort of like vegetable medley. Maybe throw in a quinoa in there. And that's it. Right? Like I used to get so hung up on, well, what's the meal? Until I realized that meals are just sort of like proteins and vegetables. Like it's always that, right? And I don't know about you, but I could eat the same thing pretty often. Like my husband can't do what I'm doing because I'm having like the same chicken salad like 5 days in a row. And he just can't do it. Like he can't stomach the repetitive chicken salad. He can do it like 2 or 3 days, maybe, but like he can't stomach it the way I can. I could eat that for the rest of my life because I'm also a sauce guy, right? So I'm making a big cabbage salad. So I'm making a dense vegetable salad, a huge one, and I'm making like a ton of chicken all at the same time. And so in this salad, I'm cutting up cabbage, putting red pepper, yellow pepper, orange pepper. I'm putting in carrots, onion, garbanzo beans, black beans. I'm just putting a bunch of stuff in there, oil, vinegar, salt, pepper. That's basically it. But I have a huge bowl of this and I'm making all this chicken. I cut up the chicken. I put in 6 ounces of chicken, which is basically like sort of a quarter of the way up of this 16-ounce cup. So I just make sure that I have the chicken in there, and then I mix up this whole salad and I put a bunch of the salad on top, close it. Then I get to the next container. I put 6 ounces of chicken in. I get a bunch of that salad, put it in, close it. And I do that for like 5 or 6 salads, and I'll have some for dinner. I'll have some for lunch. It's truly that easy. And then when it comes to like a different sort of meat, I'll like roast a bunch of vegetables and I'll make some ground beef, or I'll make some like steak or something or whatever. But then I put the protein at the bottom and then I put the big vegetable medley on top. And the other day I made like sweet potatoes. I roasted sweet potatoes on a sheet pan. I put the sweet potatoes down. Then I put asparagus down, and then I put a piece of salmon on it. And that was it. Like a fillet. Broke it in half. Put it on top. Close the lid. Throw it in the fridge. It's that easy. Like, there are no recipes. The only thing you need to know is like, I need a side of vegetables and maybe like a grain and a protein. And just don't overthink it. I was overthinking it for years. I overthought it for 35 years before I just picked up the fucking container and put 6 ounces of chicken inside it and went, wait, that's it? That's what a meal is? And then I thought about it and I'm like, well, every restaurant you've ever been to is just a piece of protein and a side vegetable. And I don't know why I never thought of it as that. Like, I always thought that there was so much more to it. Like, what's the recipe? There is no recipe. And if you want it to taste a little bit different, like throw buffalo sauce on it. Put balsamic vinegar on it. Teaspoon, tablespoon. That'll change the whole flavor. The whole profile of the entire experience will be forever changed. And so I want you to know, I want you to take the plunge, because I took the plunge and I'm never going back. I'm not even looking up recipes anymore. I'm just making meats and chickens and beans and vegetables, and I'm just putting it together and I'm going, oh my God, it's really always just been this simple. Somebody tried to brainwash us thinking that we need recipes. Like, recipes are just sort of like, there's a place for a recipe. But in this food prep journey that you're about to go on, there is no place for it. And I'm telling you, like, I will sing it from the hill and mountaintops. Food prepping has changed the game for me. Absolutely changed the game for me. Like I said, I'm traveling right now, but to make sure that like I stay on track and I don't feel like I'm eating things that are like aren't going to make me feel good while I'm here, I got a bunch of stuff at the grocery store, and I can kind of follow the same formula I've been using, but I make sure that like I'll always eat breakfast or lunch or dinner, like, and I'll always feel good about it. Because I know also this isn't good, but if I'm like, sometimes I'll be like too lazy to eat something, which I know sounds like so skinny and so cool, but it's not, because then you have like a headache and you feel awful, and then you still get fat because your body is like, you're not eating anything. Time to turn on the alarm system and let's kind of store this weight up for winter because we're not eating. So like, that's what happens. So you think you're like, I'm so thin, but really you're just going to be so fat. Like, that's what happens. And you know what? I'm calling it like it is. I'm not saying being fat is bad or good or whatever. I'm just telling you that if you skip the meals, the body's going to go, we are in hibernation, fight or flight. But what you're actually doing is, it's a design flaw. It's sort of like the Delta flights with the cracks through the floor. Like, it's the thought of everything until you haven't. Well, and basically on that note, this has been the podcast by Adam Rippon. I am Adam Rippon. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Make sure that you leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen to your podcasts. And you can call and leave us a voicemail. Our number is 310-909-7117. I love you. And until next time, I'll see you here on the podcast.